A Josh Hart dagger at the buzzer gave the Heat yet another close loss at home, but this one feels particularly tough because Miami gave up a big lead and completely fell apart in the second half. What went wrong? Who's to blame? I break down the game and answer your questions on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Tuesday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. However, you may be listening or watching on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm your host, David Ramil. Today's episode is brought to you by SweatBlock. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try SweatBlock. Save 20% with promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com, also available on Amazon. The Miami Heat were outscored by 11 points in the fourth quarter and squandered what had been a 15-point lead. And while a Max Strus three-pointer tied the game with just about 6 seconds left at 107, Damian Lillard rushed up court, made a right pass to Josh Hart wide open in the corner, who nailed a three-pointer to seal the game for Miami, a 110-107 loss, dropping Miami's record to 7-3. I'll talk about the shot a little bit because I think a lot of people are thinking about it. It's a dramatic moment. Everybody kind of saw it and thought, well, there it goes. That's the reason why the Heat lost. But the reality is much different. To me, I think there were issues that were manifesting over the whole course of the second half in particular that doomed Miami's chances. It should never have come down to that three-point shot. But the players and coach Spoelstra did talk about the shot after the game. Spoelstra in particular kind of referenced that time seemed to stand still there. Many people have discussed or at least suggested the possibility of a 5-second shot clock violation or a 5-second inbound violation because they did not bring the ball inbounds right away. It seemed like it took at least 5 seconds. So perhaps there was a violation. We'll find out from the last 2-minute report from NBA officials later on Tuesday afternoon. But again, it doesn't matter. They were able to make the inbound pass. Dame Lillard took the ball. Spoelstra said that he wasn't sure what was going to happen. If Chauncey Billups, the head coach of the Blazers, was going to call a timeout or whether or not they were just going to choose to bring the ball up court. And that's exactly what they did. Dame, with the ball in his hands, ran up court, was being guarded by Jimmy Butler. Then Duncan Robinson picked him up, but he kept Duncan on his hip there, and he was able to get free. So Kyle Lowry, who had been guarding Josh Hart, kind of hedged a little bit towards Lillard because, well, the assumption is Dame Lillard, one of the greatest players in NBA history, was going to take the shot, and he did not. He wound up finding Hart in the corner, and to Hart's credit, he nailed the three-pointer. So a bit of a surprise there, not quite the way Heat fans would have expected it to turn out. I don't think anybody would have predicted a Josh Hart three-pointer from the corner being the difference maker there. But again, that wasn't what the problem was. That wasn't why Miami lost. To me, it was more about particular issues on both the offensive and defensive end that manifested in the second half. And I think that's exactly what doomed Miami's chances. I'll talk about that a little bit more now, and then also answer your listener questions, and then talk a little bit about Tyler Herro, because he was not in the game. And I wonder whether or not he would have made a difference in tonight's game. I think that it's certainly a possibility, but I'll talk about that. For now, let me break down the second half, or at least what I saw as far as what stood out in the second half. On the offensive end, it basically comes down to a lot of missed three-point opportunities. Miami was just 4 of 17 in the second half. They started off shooting the ball incredibly well. It seemed like it was going to be a record-setting pace as far as made three-pointers, or at least a season high. They did take a season-high three-pointers in the first half, then kind of went away from that from the second half a little bit. And of the shots that they did take in the third and fourth quarter, most of those weren't falling. I don't know if the main victim or whatever you want to call him there, but Caleb Martin was particularly bad from three-point range. He was 0 of 6. Gabe Vincent certainly didn't help matters any. But Duncan Robinson struggled. Max Strus struggled aside from that last second shot that he took, or 6-second shot, because the last second shot actually fell in Hart's hands. But a lot of people missing wide open looks. And Kyle Lowry spoke about this after the game. He said, you know what? We could have hit those shots. that was the difference. If we had hit those shots in the second half the way we did in the first half, Miami would have won this game. And I happen to agree there. I think a lot of it just boiled down to, as it often does in the NBA, a make or miss league. Miami missed a lot of wide open shots that they normally should have hit. Give credit to Portland's defense. They junked it up a little bit in the second half, went with a zone defense that was particularly effective for Miami in the first half. And then they kind of went away from that in the second half as Portland's shooters started to find a way to knock down open shots, particularly after Simons, Dame Lillard having a couple big shots, even though he had a subpar night. So I think part of the defensive issue for Miami was to try and let everybody else hurt you. Everybody else wound up completely hurting Miami there. It was a egalitarian effort, a group effort from the Blazers, making sure that everybody other than Dame Lillard was responsible for that loss there. So as far as the Portland defense, like I mentioned before, I think it made things somewhat difficult for Miami in the sense that their offense really bogged down to a sloth there. It was really, really slow. There were many possessions, and I'd have to go back and watch all of them. But in the second half in particular, it felt like once the junk defense or the zone defense changed things up for Miami's offense in transition, they weren't as able to get those kind of open looks. A lot of just holding on to the ball, kind of pounding it, dribbling, over dribbling, going 15, 16 seconds into the shot clock, and then kind of realizing, well, hell, we have to take a shot somewhere. And then swing, find an open person, somebody under the basket, maybe try to hit a layup, only to find the Bosnian bear, Yusuf Nurkic, under the rim for one of his blocks. And then if not, they would kick it out to the perimeter. And then again, not a lot of shots falling from the 3-point line. So that's where the credit to Portland's defense and game plan overall, I think, was really effective. Look, the Blazers are a better team than expected. Miami was able to beat them when they were on their West Coast road trip. Their only win of that road trip, because of course they lost to the Golden State Warriors and the Sacramento Kings. So to me, Portland again deserves a lot of credit there, but Miami could have done things a little differently. We saw a passivity there that hadn't been available in the first half or wasn't visible in the first half. Like Miami was just so much more fluid in the first half, moving the ball, knocking down shots. It seemed like everybody was stepping up. Gabe Vincent was hitting big shots. Kyle Lowry was fantastic. He was not to blame. As something that we've talked about on the show recently, Kyle Lowry seems to be the bellwether, the measuring stick for this Heat team. And, if he plays well, Miami wins. If he doesn't, often they lose. Tonight, that was not the case. He was fantastic, aggressive from the start, knocking down 3-point shots, had a really solid overall night. So the problem was not on him. In fact, I think he wound up benefiting from the absence of Tyler Herro, something I'll talk about a little bit later on the show. But just many open looks that were, available to Heat players, and they just weren't able to capitalize. Again, Caleb Martin going 0 for 6 from 3-point range. It seems like his 3-point shot has developed more of a hitch, more of a noticeable hitch. Like it's always been somewhat inconsistent. I think he put in the work over the offseason, and then with just the lack of practice, the lack of repetition, not being able to take those shots over and over again, hundreds of shots over the course of the offseason, I think he's starting to fall back into bad habits. There was a one shot in particular where he did hit the shot, but because of the way he sets his feet and then kicks his leg out for some inexplicable reason, what should have been a 3-point shot was actually ruled a 2-pointer. He was, just inches away from nailing that 3-pointer. So while not completely on his shoulders to bear the burden of that loss, he was problematic. He played great defense. Again, holding Lillard mostly in check. He was great on point of attack defense, fighting his way through screens. Just a really solid overall effort. In fact, I would credit, Jimmy Butler picked up 6 steals in the night, but I think a lot of those had to do with that point of attack defense where they were making things so difficult for whoever had the ball in their hand that he was able to read, was able to read the possession and see how the ball was being kicked out, and his elite reaction time and his ability to close out quicker, almost as quick as anybody in the NBA, allowed him to intercept these passes and get wide open transition baskets there. So great overall night from Jimmy. Great overall night from Jimmy defensively. Offensively, he struggled from the floor. I think 5 of 14 overall, only 6 free throw attempts. So a different kind of night for Jimmy, not the impactful night he normally has. A statistic that kind of stood out to me in the second half, 13 assists to 16 made field goals. And that's kind of really surprising because it makes it seem like, normally that statistic is pointed out and it says, you know what, Miami's moving the ball around. They're sharing the ball. The offense is flowing. Everybody's got their hand on it. And you're looking for the open looks and everybody's knocking down. I think this was kind of the flip side of that, where, yes, they were moving the ball around maybe a bit too much. And again, only 16 made field goals, not enough to outpace the Blazers there. And I think a lot of that was just because of that way the offense was slowing down. And this is kind of where you need somebody like Tyler, that designated bucket getter who can, he doesn't necessarily rely on everybody else to create his offense. He's still the best player, maybe second to Jimmy Butler overall, but more of an offensive repertoire than Jimmy in creating his own shot. Jimmy was attacking the basket to some degree. He was a little passive also, making those frustrating passes to a wide open three-point shooter or somebody that he perceived to be wide open, even though he had some open looks near and or under the rim. But this is where Tyler's willingness to take that shot really would have come in handy for Miami. So a tough loss, not the end of the world. I'm not panicking, and I know some of you are frustrated and panicking. I would advise against that. I think, one, the team hasn't been healthy. That's not really a reason or an excuse, but it is a fact of the situation. And two, I think they are having some struggles, some growing pains, and trying to figure out how to play off of one another with or without Tyler in the lineup. And I think he's a big cause. And I know that sounds negative, like he is not at fault here, but he is the reason for that change. He is a unique offensive player onto himself, unlike anybody else on this roster. And so that forces everybody to understand or play a different role than perhaps they're accustomed to, even a longtime veteran like Kyle Lowry. But even when you look at just last night, missed open shots was a huge difference there. Miami overall has lost several close games, and I think it's just a matter of tweaking a few things here and there. And I don't anticipate that Miami is worried right now. They would like to continue winning, but I still think they believe in themselves, and I still think they like their chances. And given that we haven't heard any kind of frustration, look, I mean, normally when a team starts to lose, that's when people get frustrated. You start hearing about blowups in the locker room, players only meetings, that kind of stuff, where something is brewing. And you can tell, we're pissed off at player X because he's a ball hog or he's not sharing it. He plays differently. He's only trying to jack up shots, put up big statistics because he's on a contract here, et cetera. That's not what this is about. I think everybody is still buying into the Heat ethos. I think Jimmy might be a little somewhat frustrated over the course of the season just because, well, he wants to win. He wants to be able to cement his legacy with a championship. Kyle Lowry, I know a lot of people have suggested he's somewhat checked out, but he's still competitive. Again, last night, that wasn't the problem. And though it has been a problem over the course of the season, I think he still wants to win. He still wants to play at a high level. In fact, I overheard him talking to an assistant coach prior to the game starting and just lamenting how he should have hit open shots against the Indiana Pacers that resulted in a loss, that he felt like he could have been a bigger difference maker there. And I can't blame him for that. I think that's a fair assessment of himself. And I think, he understands that he needs to play better, that he needs to be more consistent. And he took that as motivation, and we saw him be aggressive against the Blazers on Monday night. So that's a sign of positivity to me. I think it's all going to work out. I think eventually they'll shore up the roster. They'll make a change. Maybe they'll make a change in the starting rotation, something, again, that I'll talk about a little bit later. But I would not be overly concerned from Miami's 4-7 start. It's not great, but it's not necessarily doom and gloom just yet. In any case, we'll talk a little bit. I'll answer some of your questions rather in the second half. But first, I wanted to talk about a new sponsor of the show. They were a former sponsor, but now they're back. And I think it's an important product. I had a friend of mine who is a teacher. And, he used to have an issue where sometimes, for reasons that he couldn't understand or explain, he would just start sweating through shirts. It got to the point where he was actually bringing a second shirt with him to class. He'd have to change in his free period there. He didn't want the kids snickering about it. And, you know how kids can be. It was embarrassing because he was a role model in the school. And at the same time, he had what was a pretty obvious sweat problem that you could see clearly through his armpit area there. And so he felt a little embarrassed. So I told him, look, when we started this sponsorship deal, I told him, try SweatBlock. He tried it. It was fantastic. It changed everything. He was confident, didn't have to bring a second shirt, could completely just go through the day focusing on what he was supposed to be doing, which is teaching your kids. And that was such a life changer, a game changer for him, made him much more comfortable, much more happy, much more confident. And if you know somebody or you yourself are dealing with unwanted sweat issues, then I think this is the solution for you. SweatBlock wipes are your little secret to confidence. Like I said before, the SweatBlock wipes work for up to 7 days per use. You apply them on Sunday and you'll stay dry all week. Who wouldn't want that? If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try SweatBlock. Save 20% with a promo code locked on at sweatblock.com. And you can also find it available at Amazon. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. I'll talk a little bit about Tyler Herro and the impact he could have made in Monday's game, but also the fact that Kyle Lowry, seemed to play off a little bit more effectively with Herro out of the lineup, and why I think a lineup change might be required. But let's get to some listener questions. Thank you to everybody who sent those in using the hashtag AskHelloHeat. We love hearing from you, especially if after every game. So continue to do that whenever possible. This one comes in from Anthony. He writes in, what realistic trades can the Heat make that can actually help strengthen this team? Not Kyrie Irving or Russell Westbrook. Daniel adds, this is just a statement, not a question. Time to make a trade. This Heat team ain't it. Well, I disagree, Daniel. I think this Heat team might not be it, not a powerhouse, but they weren't a powerhouse last year, even when they were the first in the Eastern Conference. I think every win last year was a difficult one. They had to work for it. They were injury issues, obviously, to Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. Kyle Lowry missed time for injury and also for personal reasons. So it never seemed like this team was 100% healthy, but they had to work for everything, whether the team was healthy or not. And I just think that's the nature of this group. They're just resilient, hard workers, relying on guys that might not have the talent that leads to a top 10 selection in the NBA draft. At the same time, they know their mission. They work together as a group. It's why I'm confident in this team moving forward, is that they'll be able to figure it out, because there is so much internal belief and faith and confidence in who they are as a group. So let's not dispute that. Right now, there are 4-7. A lot of people looking for trades as a solution. I would advise against that. I don't think anything is on the horizon right now. I don't think that they're going to be overly concerned until about the 20 game mark. I think Pat Riley has normally indicated that's where your more complete assessment of this group can take place. And without Omer Yurtseven, without Victor Oladipo, who was seen shooting around pregame yesterday, so that's a positive sign if you want to read into that. Without this group at 100%, I don't know if you can necessarily say we're desperate for X player or we need to make a change for player X now. I don't think it's going to happen. Again, I would wait until another 8 or 9 games before the Heat front office starts saying, okay, we realize now, let's say Caleb Martin isn't the solution, or maybe it's time to move on from Kyle Lowry. Maybe we can get something out of Duncan Robinson. But I will answer your question regarding what players might be available, what realistic trades there could be. Not many. One of the benefits of this season is that there is incredible parity, with the exception of the Milwaukee Bucks, who are yet to lose a game. Most teams are kind of right in there. 3-4 games might separate the 1 through the 11 seed. And I know it's because, it's early in the season, but it doesn't seem like there's any particular losers outright. There's hope in Houston. There's hope in Orlando, however misguided it might be. There's hope in Detroit. They still think that they're just a player or two away, perhaps, from, positioning themselves for a play-in tournament. I think the only team that is outright tanking might be the Oklahoma City Thunder. Even the Indiana Pacers, a team that was supposed to lose a lot of games, have been okay. I think there's just too much talent in that group. And again, there's more parity across the league. So I don't think there's a lot of sellers out there. If you're looking at the teams that are openly tanking, you would have said the Utah Jazz was one of them, and they're one of the best teams at the Western Conference, if not the best team, according to their record right now. So, I think Kelly Olynyk is certainly a possibility, a reunion of sorts. I know a lot of people want to think that Olynyk would be a complimentary player next to Bam Adebayo. I happen to agree. I never was a doubter in Kelly. I know he struggled on occasion, but I think he's still a great passer. He's still a really good shooter. An okay rebounder for his size, but he's a complementary player who plays off of Bam in the sense that he is a great passer, a guy who can initiate offense with that dribble handoff, and he's also going to stretch the floor to a degree that nobody on Miami's front court does right now. So I think he would be a good fit there, but in terms of what you're giving up defensively, consider exactly what I said earlier from Martin and his defense on Dame Lillard. Who are you going to put on Lillard in those situations? Jimmy Butler, further removing him from being more effective? Can you start Tyler Herro and Kelly Olynyk? I just don't see that. I think both of those players are going to be roasted defensively. Olynyk, not a bad defender, just not supremely quick-footed, especially in a switch-heavy defense. So I don't know that he's the perfect fit, and we'll all find fault with him soon enough. I know a lot of Heat fans hated him. Like, hey, they called him a trash can and things of that sort. They call him a cone, an orange cone out there because he's just a traffic cone because he was just giving up so many drives to the basket and things of that sort. So people are going to find reasons to be upset and dislike his game. Harrison Barnes is one of those names, but again, the Kings haven't been openly shopping anybody yet. I don't know any other team that's really looking to tank right now, aside, again, from the Oklahoma City Thunder. They've been a trade partner with the Heat in the past. I just don't know that they're going to be willing to move any of those players. Again, look across the roster. People want to bring up Lauri Markkanen. Markkanen's been fantastic. He's not available for anybody right now. I don't even know what the Utah Jazz plans are because they were supposed to be 3-7. Instead, they're the other way around. They're really, really damn good. They've won a lot of games. And I think they're now going to be committed to winning. So there's the Jared Vanderbilt possibility. He's a Utah player that hasn't carved out a lot of playing time there. Doesn't really fit exactly what they're doing. He could be had, I think, in a possible trade scenario, but he is far from a perfect solution. My co-host Wes Goldberg and I talked about this before, and I don't know. I don't see it from him. He's an okay shooter, an okay defender. I think he has work to do, and I think he could thrive in Miami. But again, if already you're looking at Miami's two-way players or Miami's undrafted guys and saying, we need more talent, that's not the talent upgrade that you're looking for. Jimmy for MVP asks, if the three is not falling, why do they keep trying? Drive the effing ball to the rim. I'm going to disagree with you there, Jimmy, for MVP, because I think, well, in today's NBA, the three-point shot makes a huge difference. You could be down 15 points as the Portland Trailblazers were, and if you keep taking those shots, you'll get right back into it. I think for Miami, their offense is further unlocked by their ability, and not just to take those three-point shots, but their willingness to make them. So I think that's a possibility. I saw a number of drives to the rim too. So this is another point of contention for me, is that they did drive to the rim. Unfortunately, they were giving up a lot of open looks or near open looks at the rim. I think there were concerns about Nurkic and his ability to block the shot. I don't think they wanted to face him particularly because of his size, even though he's not a particularly good defender. And they were looking to find those open shooters because, again, their offense is just so much better when they are taking and hitting those shots. Those shots were open. I mean, I don't think any team in the NBA should, and certainly not the Miami Heat, should pass up those looks. If they're open, you take that shot 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10, because that's it. It's a three-point shot. It's the most effective shot in basketball. Take it. Yeah, you can get to the rim. You can get 2 points. They wanted to go for the kill shot, and they had a comfortable lead. It should never have come down to that point. I know it was frustrating. I know it was difficult to watch some of the offense slow down to a crawl, but I don't think that was the problem either. I just don't see the three-point shot or the willingness to take the three-point shot as being problematic there. Ken asks, why do we stop moving the ball in the second half? This was an issue last season as well. You pass up open shots to get in the lane, and you kick and kick until you are forced to fight the clock. You see, this is the exact opposite then. So Jimmy for MVP and Ken are clearly watching different games here, right? Are there open shots that they should take, or should they be passing those up? According to Ken, you should take those shots. According to Jimmy, don't take those shots, drive to the rim. So I don't know. I think it's a combination of both things. If Duncan hits one more shot, if Caleb hits 1 or 2 of those three-pointers, even 2 of 6, if he's 2 of 6, 33%, which he's certainly capable of, there's no issue here. Miami wins. They improved their record to 5-6, one game under 500. That's just the nature of the league. I don't think we can read too much into it. You'd like for them to be able to find their shot a little bit more quickly. And I will say, to Ken's point, that's where it slows down a lot. You're over dribbling. You're not getting to your spots. Miami just doesn't have those shooters willing to take the shot earlier in the shot clock. It seems like, to Ken's point, there's a lot of ball movement, swinging it around. I think, that's where I'll disagree with Ken, though. I'm sorry. It's not that they stopped moving the ball. They might have been moving it too much. There was the dribbling, and then they start swing. And then all of a sudden it leads to a wide open shot. Shots weren't falling. In the first half, they were. That was beautiful, fluid offense. The ball was moving all the time. In the second half, I think we saw the zone defense, again, junk things up, slow things down, and there wasn't as much ball movement. What ball movement there was, to Ken's point, was late in the shot clock, and then there was a rush shot that was often falling out and not hitting the rim. So, it's just a bad night for the Heat. Don't read too much into it. I know it's frustrating. I don't want to police how anybody watches or is a fan of this team. And at the same time, I'll just advise positivity, not homerism. This isn't homerism on my part. This is a differentiation that a lot of our listeners and viewers think. It's not about that. I just think I look at this team and there's still enough talent. There's still enough cohesion there. And I don't necessarily see it as a concerning start to their season. I believe in this group, and I think you should all too. But I'll talk about the absence of Tyler Herro and whether or not there might be a change to the starting lineup in the next segment. But before I do that, just a reminder that BetOnline.net is still your number one source for all your sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. You've got it all on BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts like this one, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. And just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockedonheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLHeat. Be sure to please subscribe to the show. Leave a review. We're inching closer to 5,000 subscribers on YouTube, but we need your help. So please click that subscribe button so you can get notifications as soon as we drop an episode. You won't be disappointed. Putting out near daily content. If we didn't do it today or a justifiable hour, it's just because, well, I'm here by myself and it was a late night yesterday, had technical difficulties, and could not wind up finishing up the recording of the show. But thanks to everybody who's tuning in today. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to do so that you can get the best Heat coverage available to you. I know I've been somewhat critical of Tyler Herro, even as my co-host Wes Goldberg seems like a Tyler Herro apologist on occasions. I think it's somewhere in between, as most things in life generally are. I do think the Herro situation in Miami is a bit of a concern. And I saw a very fluid offensive display in the first half from the first and second unit. So not necessarily, I think, indicative of Tyler's absence, although Kyle, as I mentioned before, much more comfortable with the ball in his hands, leading the offense. The floor general that everybody expects Kyle to be was absolutely on display. It's just easier for him to make those decisions to lead that offense when you don't have to give the ball to Tyler and watch him go to work for 10 to 15 seconds within a shot clock. So I think that's part of the issue there. It's not necessarily a knock on Tyler. That's just who he is. That's how he plays. And you're not going to get him to change just yet. It's going to take time. And it's going to take time for everybody to figure it out. In the meantime, I honestly think it's time to consider moving Tyler to the bench, because this team just needs that scoring punch off the bench. They're not getting it from anybody. Gabe is too inconsistent, although he was solid in the first half. Duncan, similar, too inconsistent. Max is starting there. I think he's a better answer, even though he was in foul trouble early on and did struggle from the floor as well. He just seems like a better option. He understands his role and how to complement guys like Jimmy and Kyle a little bit more effectively. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to create his own shot because he's a catch and shoot guy, as well as he should be. That's his strength of his game. Tyler, not enough of a catch and shoot guy, even though his catch and shoot numbers last season were elite, as my partner Wes has talked about many times. He just has gotten away from it. Right now, he's more about looking to create his shot by driving into the mid-range area there. That slows down the shot clock. That just kills the possession. And it's unnecessary. If you can take a contested 18-footer, maybe you'll hit it. Maybe you won't. What's the point? You're not moving the ball around. Again, we saw the fluidity on offense. We saw the ball being shared. But there's still a role for him to play. And I don't mind saying it. He's a bucket getter, and that's what he should do. That's where his focus is. That's his strength. You'd like him to continue to expand his game, to be a playmaker, to be more of a complementary player. But that's who he's never been, and I don't know that he's ready to do so right now. He's too hung up, for my taste, on the idea of starting. When asked, do you want to be a starter? Why do you want to be a starter? Because you come into the league, this is his response, because you come into the league to be a starter, to be one of the best players in the game. He wants to build his legacy, and I get it. That's important for NBA players. You don't get to be one of the 450 best players in the world, whether you're Kelly Olynyk or any other scrub on any roster out there. You're one of 500 very damn good basketball players in a world of 7.5 billion people. Consider that. You don't get to that place without being supremely confident and knowing exactly who you are and leaning into that 100%. So for Tyler, part of his legacy is, continuing to build who he is as a player, getting that recognition, being an all-star. He's not ready to just be a sixth man right now. That was what he did over the course of his career early on. He wants to do something different right now. I just don't think he's ready. I don't think this team is ready. If you had a different point guard, maybe a Dame Lillard, Dame will take those shots. Maybe he'll hold the ball, but I think he is also willing to let other players initiate offense to a certain degree. I don't see that. He's not the floor general that Kyle is. So you're minimizing everybody's strengths. Either you take the ball out of Kyle's hands and make him less of a player than he's supposed to be, or you put the ball in Tyler's hands and let him go to work, and that slows everything down where everybody's kind of just watching and going, oh, okay, well, there's Tyler pounding, dribbling the ball for 15, 16 seconds in a shot clock. Oh, there he is pulling up for an 18-foot midi. Maybe it falls, maybe it doesn't. Great shot, way to go. Nobody else is doing shit. And then it's kind of, a bogged down offense that you don't necessarily want. So that's it. I saw something positive out of this Miami Heat offense in the first half. Then you see something negative from them where Tyler would have come in and said, you know what? Give me the ball. You're not hitting Caleb. You're not hitting Gabe. Jimmy, you're having an off night. I don't care. Give me the damn ball. Let me go to work. This is where it pays off to have a bucket getter like Tyler. But there are right situations for it, and there are not so good situations for it. And I don't know that he's ready. I don't know that this team is ready to accept him as a starter. As much as I thought he belonged there, as much as I thought they could lean into that offensive side of their game and just continue to be a really strong and potent offense, it just hasn't worked out that way. And you want them to continue to find some rhythm as they slowly work their way through the offseason or through the regular season in order to become a much more effective team by the time the playoffs roll around. But that'll do it for today's show. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go check out oh no, this is wrong copy there. Sorry about that. It doesn't matter. Just go subscribe to every show on the Locked On Podcast Network, particularly Locked On Fantasy Sports. They do great work. Just make sure to check out everything in the Locked On NBA podcast as well. I'm your host there on Tuesday nights. Usually, last night, I was able to save myself from the 15-game slate there, so I did not have that covered, but make sure you subscribe to Locked On NBA to get all the coverage you're looking for. And don't forget, Locked On Sports Today gives you all the sports information that you're looking for in 30 minutes or less. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me.